All right. Welcome, Changemakers. My name is Holly Rustick, and you are at the Grant Writing and Funding Podcast. And I'm here to help you grow capacity, increase funding, and advance mission. And I'm super duper excited because today on the podcast and the YouTube channel, I have a very, very special guest. And I've been talking about him now. If you're a part of my members group, we've been talking about him and you guys gave me some questions, but this is Sean Croxton. Sean is a podcast host of the Quote of the Day show, but he also has a huge repertoire of other things that he has done. He also started Underground Wellness. He was a podcast host for this top-ranked health podcast. And when it was at the top of the game, man, he wanted to switch over into something else. And just as a little background on this, I've been listening to Sean for, I guess it's been almost 7 years now. And so it's like been really exciting. But when he was talking about, I was listening to him on Underground Wellness, and I was like, okay, I got it. My health is good. And then he started talking about this money mindset stuff. And I was like, I'm interested in that. And before you know it, he opened another podcast, The Sessions, which was really, really awesome. He had Bob Proctor on, some other great forward-focused thinkers in money mindset. And then he's now transitioned into Quote of the Day, where he curates just amazing, inspirational speakers, but also people who really can talk about money mindset. They can talk about just like, how to reframe and reprogram your mind, but through inspiration, through creativity, and through like practical tips, which I absolutely love. So this is Sean Croxton. He has, once again, Quote of the Day podcast. It's a top-ranked personal development podcast. And you can find him at www.seancroxton, Seancroxton.com. Thank you so much for being here today, Sean.
Thank you very much, Holly. Good to be here.
Yeah, I'm super excited. So yeah, we were talking, I'm actually, Sean also runs Richlet Society, which is an online it's a live interactive book club, which I love, Sean. Like, I can't believe you give an hour and a half of your time every single week to live discussions on what we're actually reading. And you give homework, like these downloadables. So it's not like, oh, I just read the book and I'm not really processing it. I'm trying to get to the next stage. It's not that at all. It's like, I can read a couple of chapters, do the homework, really probe, get into what I'm reading. So I really learn from that. And then jump into the group and you're there with everybody else to discuss it and how we're actually growing and learning from this reading. So Richlet Society is also a great thing that you offer. So I'm really excited about that. Yeah. So thank you. Yay.
Thank you.
Yeah. So, but what I wanted to say, and I was like, okay, so I was in the group, I'm listening to all this money mindset. I'm listening, to how we're reprogramming. And I thought, boom, epiphany, Sean should be on the show, on the Grant Writing and Funding podcast, because what we talk about is money. We talk about money all the time, and it's almost like this two-edged thing, right? Yeah. On money, and then people who are freelance writers, so they need to make money. So it's like this interesting thing. But before we go into that, because I know you're going to be talking about money mindset today, and I would love for you to talk a little bit about the science behind it. But it's not like you just woke up with a silver spoon in your mouth and were like, okay, I am totally going to be rich my entire life. And that's my thing from here on, this was a process for you. So can you kind of share your story about that process?
Like my life process, or life in general?
Yeah. If you grew up, or, did you always have this money mindset? Like, I can, make millions.
Well, I mean, I did. I don't think I have always had the entrepreneurial spirit. My dad was an entrepreneur. My mom worked at the phone company. So I did have that entrepreneurial influence in my life, seeing my father. He sold shoes Monday through Friday, but on the weekends, I should say, he sold like weird stuff, like knockoff Guess and Gucci sweatshirts and toll bootleg stuff and Rambo knives and stun guns and butterfly knives. There's all this random stuff he would sell at the swap meet. in
If
Oakland.
only eBay was available then, right?
Yeah, seriously, he would have killed it. I never thought about that. My dad would have killed it on eBay. But yeah, so just watching him sell product and, seeing that big wad of cash in his back pocket, at the swap meet was very inspiring to me. And, as kids, up until the age of 10, we had it pretty well. We had it pretty good. My brother and I, my mom, my dad. Then when they got divorced, things changed dramatically. We went from being pretty well off to not really having anything to being like, below the poverty line. And so I got to see the contrast of, doing well versus, we're going to go get some donated food today. Awesome. You know what I'm saying? That type of thing. Yeah. So I was able to see both sides. And, when I started my own, like fast forward over a decade now, when I started my underground wellness business, I saw so much opportunity there. Like I was like, oh my God, this is a great idea. And people have loved it from day one, making YouTube videos and stuff like that. And there was such an opportunity to make a lot of money doing it, but there was just this block, where I just felt like I didn't feel congruent about it. There was just something that was getting in my way. Even when I was talking to people who just like really wanted to do health coaching with me, just really wanted to work with me. And I would just get to the point in the call where I had to, ask for the sale, and I would just lock up and stutter and do all of that stuff. And I wasn't fully owning my worth. So I was, there was a buddy of mine who I was complaining about my situation with, and he was like, man, I got something for you. I'm going to send this audio file to you. And he sent it over. And I remember the subject line of the email was, listen to this now. And I think now might've been in caps, and I listened to it, and it was a talk with Dr. John DeMartini. He was being interviewed, and he was talking about value determination and finances and your hierarchy of values, your ladder, we'll say, when it comes to your values. What do you value highly, and what do you not value so highly? And are your highest values in line with your goals? And what I learned from that talk was a couple of things. Number one, my highest values were definitely not in line with my goals, especially financially. In the grand scheme of things, my goal to earn a significant amount of money just was not that important. Also, something he said was that your income will always be in direct proportion to the quality and the quantity of the service that you provide. And it really got me thinking, like, I'm doing high quality service. I'm a really good health coach. I'm making great YouTube videos. I'm doing a phenomenal podcast. So the service is there, but it was mostly about the quantity. I wasn't helping enough people in terms of selling them something. I was always fascinated in my high school and early college years by the recording industry, the music industry. Because every Tuesday when I was a freshman and sophomore in college, living in the dorms, every Tuesday I would walk up to the record store and I would listen to the new albums that came out that day, and I would, buy whatever, and I'd walk back to the dorm, and, that album would cost me $13. And I would think like, wow, this album is going to go gold, or it's going to go platinum. If it goes gold, then that means they sold 500,000 of them at $13 a piece. If it goes platinum, that means they sold 1 million of them at least at $13 a piece. That's insane, because they only had to record the album once.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Yeah. They only had to record it once, and they sold it to 1 million people without doing any extra work. That's really cool. I want to get into something like that. And so that was the quantity part of it. How can I help more people get healthy at that time, at the same time, without any extra work? How can I do it without my physical presence? And that's where everything really started for me. And there were other aha moments that I had around that time. And here's one that I know a lot of people deal with. It was the us versus them mentality. And what I mean by that is, like, your relationship with money has everything to do with something called your consciousness, success consciousness, or a poverty consciousness. And many of us who were raised with a poverty consciousness, we learned that there were a certain group of people who were very well off, who were financially free, who were rich, who were nothing like us, and they were inherently greedy, bad, evil people. And the light bulb moment that I had around that time was, oh my gosh, if my business crushes it the way that I think it can, and I know it can, then I'm going to become one of them. And I think that
the
was
greedy people. Is that what you're thinking?
Yeah. I'm going to, and people are going to judge and condemn me the way that I have judged and condemned them for pretty much all of my life.
Oh, that's
and
good.
so, yeah. And so that was a tough one. And that all goes back to the programming. And so again, this whole thing of money mindset just really started with those aha moments, values, as well as the quality and the quantity of the service I provide, and getting past that us versus them mentality.
I think that's so huge, Sean, because us versus them is a lot in the nonprofit world too, right? Like where we see, a lot of nonprofits, they look at bigger nonprofits or they look at the corporations and they're like, we want money from you, but we're kind of better than you because you're greedy and all you want is our tax deduction. You know what I mean? And there's there's that kind of weird, kind of tangled up mindset behind that. So how did you get past that? Because I know you're past that. You know what I mean? I know you're very giving. You're one of the most giving people that I know. So you've built schools in Guatemala and, you've helped, people all over the world. Like you've even helped I know I was listening to one of your podcast interview, and you said there was a lady that was killed in La Jolla, and you went on a GoFundMe page and you just went ahead and helped out with the kids. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's huge. Like what a heart. So now you're past that. You're giving, you're in a 1%, kind of thing. And you're like, I'm proud of it because I can give. So how did you kind of break that mold?
I think I got past the us versus them part by just applying logic to it. And I talked about this last week in our Money Mind Academy class. It's, how do I know this for sure? There's a question that we can all ask ourselves around these limiting beliefs we have. And okay, so how do I know this for sure? Is this always true? So in other words, are all rich people greedy? No, all rich people aren't greedy. And I think that when you just think about it that way, I have like 5 or 6 questions for this, but that's the lead one. Like, are all rich people greedy? No. Well, okay, another one. How do you know for sure that rich people are greedy? Have you talked to them? Right. Have you had an experience with them? Like, how do you know this? Oh, you probably know it because mom or dad said so.
Right.
Or the media is saying so. And usually it starts like before the age of 7. Our brain waves, now it'll take me a while to kind of give you this whole thing, but our brains are set up in a way that we don't have the full ability to reject information that's coming in. And so the beliefs and the ideas and the opinions of the authority figures in our lives become accepted by us as our beliefs, ideas, and opinions. I say beliefs, ideas, opinions, bios become our biography. So other people's bios become our biography. It becomes the story of our life because it becomes those core beliefs that run us and at the same time dictates the way that we perceive the world. We see the world through a filter of somebody else's beliefs, ideas, and opinions. And it happened so long ago, because now we're in our 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, that we don't even realize it. It's completely unconscious. And our brain, what it likes to do, because we've accepted those beliefs and ideas and opinions as truth, the brain likes to reaffirm our truth over and over and over and over and over again. So even though the corporation who's writing you a check, maybe you think maybe they're writing you a check because that's really something that's part of their values as a corporation, but you or somebody else out there may distort it, and you'll distort it and say, oh, they just want the tax write-off. Well, that's just your brain and you trying to prove yourself right, proving these beliefs and ideas and opinions right. And we need to kind of step back and ask ourselves, why do I believe this to be true? Is this a belief or is this a fact? Is this disputable or is this indisputable? And if it's disputable and we can say, no, not all rich people are greedy, that leaves an opening where you can make a choice as to how and who you're going to be when you become financially free. Are you going to be the greedy rich people? No, I'm going to be the generous one. And what you'll find is, like, I have a lot of rich friends. Rich people in general, but not all the time. There's always going to be exceptions. There's a lot of greedy broke people as well. I know a lot of greedy broke people.
Me too.
But in general, rich people are some of the most generous people and nicest people you will ever meet in your entire life. And that's why they're rich.
I love that. I love that. So it's a lot of that changing mentality. And it's interesting, Sean, because I kind of have a similar backstory as far as my dad was very wealthy, living in a penthouse in Toronto, but not paying child support. My mom, we're getting groceries from the Catholic nuns. You know what I mean? So it was like that whole, oh, rich people they're not giving, they just want to, so it was that whole battle. So those are a lot of the things that I had to reset my money mindset on too, right? To be like, it really does go back to when I was a child and what I heard and what I experienced. And I feel like when I've gotten to that point, I've been able to reformat so much of my thinking and really be empowered. So I think that's like such an important thing that you teach about, because that's really where you can make like the how, right? So you're explaining the why. The why is because we're listening to this, we're saturated with this information that may not be true, but the how is like, how do you, get over that is, that's a technique, but do you have other techniques that people can utilize?
Yeah. Applying logic to it. I read in a book, your limiting beliefs are typically hidden from consciousness because your limiting beliefs don't really make any sense when you really, really think about them. We do like an hour of this in Money Mind Academy, where by the time we're done with that hour, like people are like, oh my God, I can't believe I believe that. Like that doesn't make any sense that I believe that, because we only had to talk about that particular belief for about 90 seconds for the person to realize like, oh, that's not true. I just accepted it to be true, and I never really examined it. It had gone unexamined for so long. Another thing to do is to, just the same way that your brain was programmed because there were certain dominant brain waves going on in your brain during those first several years of life, and your brain accepted all of these beliefs. What you can do is like visualization, meditation, because when you do visualization, you just sit down, you get calm, you actually turn down the frequency of your brain waves, and you get yourself down into something called the alpha brainwave state. And the alpha brainwave state gives you conscious control over your subconscious mind. So when you're in that state and you visualize the person who you want to become, when you visualize your goal, actually you living inside of your goal, and you feel as if it is true. There's a thing about your subconscious mind. Your subconscious mind is rather gullible. Your subconscious mind doesn't really understand, or it can't tell the difference between a real experience versus something that you are vividly imagining in your brain. And so when you get quiet and you sit and you get your brain waves down to that alpha state and you visualize, you're literally creating brand new memories, brand new programming in your brain. And when you do that consistently, you do that twice a day, 10 minutes a piece, 10 minutes in the morning, 10 minutes right before you go to bed, you are doing some serious rewiring there. Now, in between, during the day, what you want to do is when these negative beliefs come up, for example, somebody approaches you to sell you something. We all get sold. We all buy stuff. But maybe we had an experience when we were young and your dad might have been gotten over on by some salesperson. So your dad had nothing but bad things to say about salespeople for the rest of his life. And now since you have that experience wired into your brain, now you're using that experience from the past to color the present. And so now you're in this present experience and you're completely seeing it through the lens or the filter of a past experience from long ago. So when that happens, or when more limiting thoughts or self-talk come up, you literally say to yourself, cancel. Or you literally say to yourself, next. You unplug that thought from, or the electricity from the thought, because that thought is literally electricity running through your brain. It's a neural pathway that gets activated. Electricity fires right through it. And what you can do is use your conscious mind to unplug that, to say, oh, I'm thinking like a person in lack consciousness right now. And this is not serving me anyway. This is actually creating my reality. Let's stop and let's consciously redirect our thoughts to something of abundance. Every day, in every way, I'm becoming more abundant. Every day, in every way, I'm becoming more abundant or more prosperous or whatever it may be. Just shift that line of thinking. And what you'll do by using the combination of the visualization sessions, plus canceling and redirecting your thought during the day, you will imprint or literally sprout new neural pathways in your brain. Neurons that fire together, wire together. So when you keep on redirecting, you keep on visualizing, you're making those neurons fire together, and neurons that no longer fire together, no longer wire together. So you're actually eliminating and pruning off those old limiting pathways that you've been running for so long. It takes time for it to happen, but it'll work. And a lot of people will say, I don't want to sit down. I can't do that. I don't want to sit down for 10 minutes. I don't know. Dude, you're literally doing nothing. You're literally doing nothing for 10 minutes twice a day. Like, how easy could it be? You don't have to read a book. You don't have to write anything. You don't have to run anywhere. Like, you don't have to do anything. You just have to sit down for 10 minutes and visualize your life being the way that you want it to be. And that makes all the difference, believe me.
I love that. Yeah, it's like, yeah, you don't have to spend $5,000 on a treadmill to like,
it's free.
It's free. It's easy. Like, yeah, anyone can do it in any condition. Like, yeah, I love that. And that's really a part of it too. It's like rewiring. And I remember in college, I heard about the dendrites in the brain, right? And I remember that just like totally, I was like, ooh, like, and then I realized like there are these different pathways like you're talking about. And that was just something that was so big to me, but it's not woo-woo. You know, some people might be like, this is getting a little bit woo-woo, but athletes have been using this for like, I don't even centuries probably, right? The different types of visualization and all different types of people have been doing this, right?
Yeah, there's nothing woo-woo in my opinion about the neuroplasticity of your brain. And that's one thing that I've really tried hard to stay away from is the woo-woo stuff. Like when I got into personal development and got out of the health space, like I was like, I want to do this different from everybody else. Yeah. Like if I say something woo-woo, if I say something that's just your standard self-help platitude, I want to be able to back that up by some science, by some neuroscience, by some psychology, by some quantum physics. Like I want to know what part of your brain is being activated and what's turning off and what's throwing you off. And so, yeah, we haven't really talked much about that yet, but again, that visualization stuff is not woo-woo. That is real science of rewiring the pathways in your brain.
Yeah. And that's what I love about it too, because I'm very analytical. I'm very science driven. So I resonate with how you teach. And I also resonate really with how you're bring in other sources. So it's not just like, I'm coming up with all of these things. It's like, no, it's backed up by research. It's backed up by this author, this scientist, this researcher, you know what I mean? So you bring all of that in too, which is really, really inspiring. All right. Thanks. So yeah, you're welcome. So another question is basically on the flip side then. I want to kind of talk about the flip side because this is another myth I see with nonprofits, with people who are just getting into grant writing is, oh my gosh, there are like millions and millions and millions of dollars out there, which is true, but it's so easy to get. It should be like, I should get it like that. I should be able to open a nonprofit and within a month, I'm making the same salary that I did at my corporate job. And, you know, it's like the feeling of entitlement because there's money out there. And it's not, you know, you have to have a strategy in place. Sometimes it takes time, right, to develop these things and to really get your game plan together. Like any business, really, a nonprofit is a business. So can you kind of speak to that opposite kind of mentality?
You know, to me, this is really simple. I have no room in my life for entitlement. You know, if you're not willing to work for it, if you think it's going to happen overnight for you, it's simply not going to happen that way. You know, we have to have realistic expectations for ourselves. If not, we're going to become highly disappointed. Yes, there's a lot of money out there, but I'm not sure, and I don't really know this space so well. I don't think corporations or whomever it is are just like throwing money out the window. They want to make sure that their money is going to a place where it's going to be taken care of and used the way that they expect it to be used. And so, anybody coming into anything with a sense of entitlement is probably going to find themselves highly disappointed. If they believe in themselves, that's something different. If it's just a faith and belief in themselves or themselves, that's cool. But I think there's still a sense of realism that they need to have in that space to be able to succeed, really.
Yeah, because a lot of times they're like, I'm so passionate about this cause, so everybody should be, and everybody should give me money because there is a need. And yes, there is a need, but it's not everybody's mission or priority, so to kind of speak on that as far as
that's like when, certain causes will stop me at the mall. And, I'll be like, no, man, I'm not, well, why? I'm not interested. Well, why not? I'm like, it's just not my cause. Well, why isn't it your cause? Don't you know? I'm like, there's other causes that I support, and I can't support every cause in the world, and that's why I'm not supporting yours. I got others that I'm doing, and they still give me a hard time as if like their cause needs to be my cause. And it's like, everybody's different. Everybody's got different values. And don't feel entitled to have my money just because you're, telling me a story about something. I'm going to have choice. I have the power to choose.
Right. Right. And that's really too, like what I try to tell them about, like foundations, corporations, the federal government, even, it's really about what they're interested in, and you have to appease to their priorities. Right.
Yeah. And speak to them. I'm sorry to cut you off, but to speak to them in terms of what their values are, because, companies, I'm going to guess, again, this isn't my space, are going to write a check for causes that line up with their values. And so if you can speak, and this almost like, I'm talking to a husband whose wife hasn't supported him with whatever endeavor he's going to do to earn more money. I'm like, you got to speak to her and her values. Like, what does she value, and how is she going to get more of that by you going out and doing your thing? Because if you don't speak to somebody and their values, they just don't hear it, because it just sounds like a big, how is this helping me? You know what I'm saying? Like, how is this, if it's not helping me, usually, or helping someone, then that person is typically not interested in supporting you.
Right, right. And that just kind of lends to, I wanted to kind of ask you about that too, because as an influencer, you're definitely an influencer, and you're in a space where you can give, right? So how can, like, I'm not saying everyone should like email you and say, John, help me. I'm not saying that at all, but I'm saying, like, how do you kind of relate to that conversation? Is it something you actually go after instead of having people come to you as far as what you want to give to? And just kind of on the flip side of that, how would nonprofits then maybe seek influencers who do have similar values, like you're saying, to maybe be a part of their cause? Can they even do that? Is that something they should do?
I'm not sure if I can answer that question. Really. I know for me, like, education is really important. So everything that I support and have supported has something to do with education or children. And I'm sure, children can be literally anything, to be honest. But, it's something where I don't really talk, I remember one time I wrote an email to my list about, I was selling something as an affiliate, and the money that I earned as an affiliate was going to go to a Kickstarter for a real food truck several years ago. And, we might have brought in $5,000-$6,000 and went off to the food truck. And I tell you, for like a week or two, everybody and their mama was sending me emails about their Kickstarter, their GoFundMe, whatever it may be. Yeah. And so, like, I make it a point now to not really talk about stuff like that, because literally, like, people get like butthurt about it. They get offended. Well, you supported that one. Why don't you supposed to support mine? It's like, we can't do this for everybody. And that's another reason why, a lot of well-off people tend to keep their donations private. And so when we say rich people are greedy, and this is where I go back to, well, how do you know? Like, how do you know? Like, have you seen their books? You know what I'm saying? Are you their bookkeeper? Do you know where they're donating money to? Because usually people who are doing well, you don't even know where they don't tell people on purpose because they don't want to be hit up for money all the time. And so, yeah, it's just really important to keep that in mind when we're calling, well-off people greedy. You don't know.
Yeah. And I love that you say that, because it's interesting to say, you don't know where they're giving to, and they might not say anything, because then they are getting hit up constantly. And that goes back to that entitlement mentality. Like, even if you ask me, you shouldn't expect me to say yes. And I get this a lot too. I get it a lot from nonprofits who are like, Holly, I follow your stuff. I love what you're doing, but we have absolutely no money. Would you write our grants for free? And I'm like, I got to put money on I got to put food on my table still. Like, you know what I mean? Right. Like, that's not how I operate. Right. And I do like to give, and sometimes I will take a pro bono client, but that's something I decide. And that's something if I can do that, and that's something, that I'm really passionate about. And, so it is this interesting thing, but they do get offended. So it goes back to that entitlement, I think, and that entitlement mentality. So yeah, I mean, is there some way that you could say, how do you take no as it's okay, and still don't get hurt about it or don't feel entitled? Like, how can you kind of get past that?
You're going to be rejected in life. Every no is closer to a yes. That's just how it is. If you want to be in any type of industry, you're going to have to learn how to get better with the no's. If you're going to ask a question, you have to be ready for whatever answer is coming back to you, period. And another thing is not to take the no's personally. Sometimes this is what we have to get better as human beings, is just saying no. Like, if it's not a hell yeah for you, if it's something that after you make the decision, you're going to kick yourself, or when the day comes where you have to like carry out that commitment, you're like, oh, come on, why did I agree to this? We do that way too much to ourselves.
Yes.
And we really, really, really need to stop and just be willing to take the no. And if it's like, I asked a buddy of mine to help me out with a project recently, and he helps me out with almost everything. And he was like, no, I mean, honestly, this doesn't light me up. No, I don't want to do this one. And like for a half second, I was like, asshole. But then I was like, no, this isn't what he wants to do. And it's okay. If it's something that didn't light me up and he asked me about it, I would have been like, nah, doesn't really light me up, dude. Like, I'm just not going to look forward to this. You're my boy and stuff, but I'm cool. So yeah, just not taking it personally, and just understanding like people have other things to do. And if you don't fit into that, or if you didn't sell it well enough, then someone's going to say no. And a lot of times, probably, I'm going to assume, because again, I don't really know your industry very well, when you're asking for money, sometimes you get nervous. Sometimes your pitch just sucks. You're asking somebody for $100,000 or for $1 million or for whatever it may be. There's a lot on the line there. You get nervous, you screw up your pitch, you don't come off confident, you don't come off like you believe in yourself. And anybody who has any money is going to know, like, I'm not going to give money to somebody who sounds like they really don't believe in themselves, And so get more confident in what you're doing, and also learn the art of selling, like for a lot of people, sales doesn't come naturally. There are people who study sales, people who teach sales and teach courses online for sales and all that stuff. Like, do that. And the odds of somebody saying no to you are going to go down, tremendously.
I love that. And I love that because getting used to the word no is really important with grants, right? Because I tell them, like, even 85% success rate in grant writing is pretty good. So that means you're going to get some no's, right? Like, you have to get the no's, and the no's aren't necessarily bad because they give you feedback. You can reapply the next year. You can keep pursuing. But if you just are like, oh my gosh, they said no, and then you go bury your head in the sand and you're like, I'm never going to do that again. You have to go back again and reframe, your grant or your solicitation letter or whatever, your pitch to them, whatever that may be. It's a part of the learning lesson. And nonprofits don't advertise every time they were rejected for their grants. They only advertise when they secured them. Right. So that, you think, oh, they're getting them all the time. Well, they might not be, but they're putting it out there all the time. So they're going to have more yeses. Yeah, right. Absolutely. So it's a part of that. Like, you gotta be confident in your cause and not entitled for the yes, and then to take it personal. So I think those things that you just spoke about, so perfect. And I think a lot of people will benefit from that tremendously. Awesome. Now I want to kind of transition over into the freelance space a little bit. because we have a lot of people who are transitioning into freelance, to becoming a freelance grant writer and to having their own consultancy or a nonprofit consultant, right? So they're still going out there. They've got, the money, they've got to get their mindset kind of wrapped around money in the right way too. And that's the first thing I talk about in my course and my books too, is actually money mindset, because if you don't have that, forget it, like if you aren't clear on that. But, when they go out, then they're actually chasing the money, but they're also trying to get the clients. So can you kind of speak from that? Because a lot of times what I see is the hardest part of the biggest challenge that a lot of consultants have is pricing, right? How do I price myself? And it goes back to value, time, joy, money, all of that kind of thing, right? But how do you, because you've been in the consultant space before, you've worked a lot with your own pricing on your different products that you sell. So, how can people kind of understand, maybe not the science behind pricing, but the confidence and the value and the mindset behind that?
Well, I mean, you have to value your work. If you're good at what you do, you should be paid really well for what you do. There's no real laws around pricing. Look at the competition or look at others who are doing what you do, see what they're charging. If people who are doing what you do are charging, I don't know, you get charged by the hour. What do you do?
Yeah, I can do either hour or I do packages. So I do
you.
this many grants, this much research will be a package, or
so,
it's hourly.
If your standard consultant is getting $200 an hour, you don't want to be any less than $200 an hour. You know what I mean? I think, if you feel like you're better or your expertise is on a higher level than everybody else's, then you should charge more. And here's the funny thing about charging. It's, I remember reading this book called Influence by Robert Cialdini. I believe it's in the first chapter. And he's talking about, I want to say, it's been a long time since I read this, so I might botch this a little bit, but I think it was a gift shop in Sedona. And there were, underneath the glass there were necklaces, I believe. And somebody came in and was like, "Can I see that necklace?" And, the person pulled it out for him or for her. And she says, "Oh, wow, this is nice." She looks at the tag and it says $200. She says, "I'll take it." And so he's like, "Okay." And he looked at the tag. He's like, "Oh, shoot." In his mind, he goes, "It's supposed to be $20, but somebody mislabeled this and it's $200, but okay, let's do this." And so the shop owner added a zero to all of the other tags for this necklace, and they started flying off the shelf, and so we have to, and the moral of the story there is, the more you charge, the more people value your service. And they also believe that if you charge a lot, you must be really good. And so you're actually going to do, a lot of people think, hey, if I charge less, if I charge $100 instead of $200, then it's going to guarantee that I get more clients. Well, number one, you start to feel bitter. You start to feel bitter about the fact that you're only getting paid half of what everybody else is. And it's also kind of a chicken shit way to do business, really, to charge, to undercut everybody. So at least get paid what everybody else is getting paid. But I'm going to guarantee that the people who are getting the best clients and who are doing the best work and who feel the best about their work are the ones who are charging more than your standard consultant. And that's usually how it is in most industries. And if somebody ever asked you, how do you charge $400 per hour when everybody else is getting $200 per hour? And you just say, well, that's what I decided my worth is, period. And whatever you think, don't let, what does Lisa Nichols say? Don't let someone else's lack of resources compromise your value. I think it is. And so if somebody can't afford you, they can't afford you. I'm sure they can go find somebody out there who's undercutting, but that client is not for you, Yeah.
I love that. I heard it in another way. Kind of the same, but in a different way. Was somebody had asked somebody, consultant, they said, "Hey, do you have scholarships? Can I pay half of it? Because you'll get a lot of that too, right? Can I just, and she just said to them, she goes, "You know what? I don't do that because then I won't show up 100%. And if you want me to show up 100%, you're going to pay the $500 per hour because that's what my worth is."
Yeah.
And I was like, that is such a polite way of saying no,
Mm-hmm.
and like lending more value. Like, and I've been using that. Like people will be like, Holly, are you part of this? And I'm like, I won't show up 100% and you want me 100%. And, I'm not going to be able to at that
Yeah.
price or for that event or whatnot. You know what I mean? So, and
Mm-hmm.
it's just like, people are like, oh, okay, I get that. Cause I don't want you at less than 100%, you know what I mean? To
Right.
show up. So
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
And some folks
So
just want to get, some folks they just want to get a discount. They say, it won't hurt if I ask. It won't hurt if I ask. And it doesn't hurt.
Right.
But
No.
the more you stick to it and say, no, I'm $500 per hour. And I feel like I'm going to give you 100% at that
Yeah.
rate. And I'm not going to feel like I'm compromising myself to do this. I think people will all go, or most people will be like, all right, I like this. They'll feel
Yeah.
more confident in you than if you
Mm-hmm.
said, oh, I'll take 400.
Right.
That sounds desperate.
It
Sounds
does.
desperate. Yeah.
And even if you're like, yay, in the moment, like the receiver, that's probably going to be tucked away in the back of your mind. Like, oh, I can get him to do less. You know what I mean? Take less or whatever. It's not that good of a thing. So
Right.
yeah, I definitely think that's important. And that's really good to lend, like, okay, but what about the people who maybe they're not experts yet and they don't feel confident charging the same type because they're transitioning into the industry, like they're starting up,
Charge what you feel confident charging, because you're going to have a
Mm-hmm.
hard time selling when you think you're charging too much. Just
Yeah.
do whatever. You're going to get people, and this happens in my industry a lot, like, you're not charging enough, charge more, double that, triple that. Da, da, da. But the person who is actually making the sale and
Mm-hmm.
doing the sale, if they don't feel confident, if they don't really feel like they're worth that, they're going to stumble all over themselves. And so
Okay.
whatever
Yeah.
you feel is right for you without being cheap.
Yeah.
If somebody said to you, hey Holly, who does your hair? And you're like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, Donna does my hair. Oh, well, how much does Donna charge for that? And you're like, Donna charges $500 every time I go in. And the person you're talking to is, oh, really? I do hair too. I'm really good. I can do something just like that. You say, well, how much do you charge? Well, I only charge $80. You'd be
Mm-hmm.
like, nah, I'm cool. I'm gonna
Yeah.
pass on that one. You're gonna go to Donna because Donna's charging, and you know Donna and all that stuff. And so charge, again, getting back to what I was saying, charge, what you feel you're worth at the time, what feels comfortable to you. And when you get confident at selling at that rate and you feel it's time to boost that up, maybe you got some testimonials for your website and all that stuff. I know a lot of health coaches who will just do free stuff for a couple months
Mm-hmm.
just to get their feet wet. And that's totally fine. Whatever makes you feel comfortable, whatever, again, get you some testimonials, get you some confidence, go ahead and do that. And then steadily raise your price as you move along. But if it's 2 years later and you're still charging $50 an hour, now we got a problem.
I like that. I like that progression. And I've heard that before too. It's like this one lady, Honoree, I was telling you about her before, and she had said, yeah, that's what I did in the beginning with my coaching is I said, I'm going to do 3 months for free and then we'll talk. If you're, happy with the ROI and everything, then, and that's how she got her foot in the door. Everybody that she had been coaching for the 3 months for free had increased their return on investment. They had done really well, and they hired her and referred her to other people. So it was just like, sometimes that's, like you said, the way to get in the door. But if you keep doing that year after year and, you're still meeting with your clients for free and you're still giving it all away, then you aren't showing your value. So that's really important.
Yeah.
I love that. Okay. So before we get off here, I have a couple of questions from my members actually that they had sent over to me for you. Cause I said, hey guys, I'm interviewing Sean Croxton. So, and some of this might be repetitive a little bit, but just to make sure that we get their questions out there. This is from Tola, and she says, how to renew one's mind daily regarding abundance and money? What tips or strategies can one use to build abundance and money mindset? And I know you kind of briefly touched on that, but if you could just reaffirm that, or if you want to add anything.
Visualization is going to be key. Another one is taking an index card and writing down your goal on there and carrying that card everywhere you go and pulling that thing out every day or every couple hours. I'm so happy and grateful now that I have, or I am, or whatever it may be, writing your goal as done, in the present tense. And just looking at it. And every time you look at it, you just activate cells in your brain. And when you tell yourself something, and I hate to use the word lie, but a lie, when you tell it over and over and over and over and over and over again, at some point you start to believe that thing, and that's just really like your brain is actually starting to match the thing that you're going after. It starts to match your goal, and it just kind of moves its way towards you. And so again, you can visualize, you can say affirmations, you can have a goal card. Another one is to have an accountability partner. That's huge.
That's good.
Having somebody
that's
who
huge.
you share your goal with, and you hold each other accountable, and you meet once a week. I want to say that increases your chances of reaching your goal by 93%. I want to say just that little thing.
For the accountability partner.
Yeah. Accountability partners.
That's it.
Huge. It's huge. And so do those things, also read some books on money mindset. There's a book I just read recently called, it's an old book. I'm not sure if you'll find it. Actually, it'll probably be on Amazon or eBay, called Prospering Woman. It was an excellent book. I just picked up at the dollar book sale a couple of weeks ago, and it was always like, oh, this is a good one. Prospering Woman.
Yeah. Are we going to read it?
No, you know what? We read, what I found with our Rich Lit Society is those little short books people like.
Yeah.
The thick books are too intimidating for people. So we just do little 100-page books or whatever, and we're just going to stick to those for a little while. Yeah.
Okay. Get us wet. Get our feet wet.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Awesome. Okay, so I have another question, which that is really fantastic. I love your answer on that. Is okay, let's see. Oh no, she disappeared. Sorry. Oh, there it is. All right. This individual, Meg Taikinko, she's been a part of a nonprofit board so the nonprofit is Junior Achievement. They've been in existence for 45 years. Their board members have been there for a long time here on Guam. But let's see, how to change the money mindset of an entire board that's been around for so long. So maybe they're doing the same fundraisers every year. Maybe they're just haven't, they don't have that spark of inspiration.
Shit. That's a good question. Because now you're talking about like changing other people's minds.
Like a group dynamic,
That is not my specialty. Honestly, I don't know. I'm sorry, Meg. I don't know the answer to that question.
I'm sure she'll be fine. But but I think maybe that goes back to being the individual who changes, right? If you as an individual can start working on this, then you may influence other people that you're around.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Leading by example, all of that stuff. That's a tough one when it's so deeply entrenched in an organization like that. Yeah. I remember, just as a quick aside, I was I might even still be on the advisory board of the Price Pottinger Nutrition Foundation. And it's run by, a lot of older people who have just been doing this for the last 30, 40 years. And, I was brought in there to kind of help them modernize their social media, their marketing, email lists and stuff like that. And it was like talking to a brick wall. You know what I'm saying? And it was just like these
I've been
beliefs,
on those boards, Sean.
These beliefs were so deeply entrenched. I'm just like, I'm not sure what it's going to take to get through to these folks.
Wow.
Like, I honestly don't know. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you for sharing that, because that is something to think about, right? Okay. So I think, let's see. I think I've gone through my questions. And do you have last words of recommendations to the people in nonprofits or people who are looking at starting their own freelance businesses, and that might just be struggling with money mindset?
The more you improve your relationship with money, and really improving your relationship with money isn't just about money. It's improving your relationship with yourself, because you are involved with money. It's just a relationship between the two of you. And, if you're in a relationship with another person, a lot of being in that relationship is actually working on yourself as well, becoming more aware of like how you are interacting in that relationship. And so a lot of this comes down to self-esteem, self-worth, self-image, which are all pretty much the same thing. But if you have a low self-worth, you're never going to have a high net worth. You know what I'm saying? That's just, it's just because it doesn't match your consciousness. It doesn't match the way that you think and you feel about yourself. It's like when a poor person wins the lottery, within 5 years, they are broke. Why? Right. Because it was just that amount of money was so above their set points. Their set point for money, their set point for themselves. And so, while the money part is important, raising your self-esteem and your self-worth is huge. Like books like Psycho-Cybernetics, any of the self-esteem books by Nathaniel Branden. There's a small book that'll help tremendously called How to Raise Your Self-Esteem. Excellent book, little book. Again, like that's the stuff that people really need to work on, is like themselves, because your money mindset is like it's your idea of money and your beliefs about money, and the idea of yourself having more money, and your idea and thoughts about people who have money. But right there in the middle is the idea of yourself having more money or raising more money for somebody else. And so, become more self-aware and really, really work to improve your self-esteem. That's huge.
Oh, I love that. That is fantastic. Thank you so much. Yeah, it always goes back to that, right? So if you guys want to find Sean, and I will have all of the links to the books that you've been talking about on the podcast today. So I'll have those in the show notes, definitely. So yeah, please do check that out, listeners. And also you have the Money Mind Reset, which is an ebook downloadable right now that gives you 5 steps to changing your relationship with money. So if you're interested in how Sean's talking today and you're like, I want to get some more information, please do go to SeanCroxton.com to get that free ebook and see how you can take the first 5 steps to changing your relationship with money. And you're also on Instagram, so you're at Sean Croxton, yeah. So SeanCroxton. Anywhere else? That you want to lead people? Quote of the day?
It's a quote of the day show. It's on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Spotify, Google Play. Did I say that one already? But yeah, so you'll find it whatever podcast platform you use.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sean, for coming on today. So appreciate you.
My pleasure, Holly.
All right. I'll talk to you soon.